Marty, good day. So good to
Hi,
have you.
Patrick. It's great to be here, Patrick.
We have a couple of tension axes for today, and I'd love to talk with you about your adventures with publishing and doing profitable business around publishing. That's one thing, and the other one we'll leave it for later. So, just as a quick forward, I'm not going to go for the duty of introducing you to the world, but I wanted to touch on things which are not necessarily on the front pages and things that are a little bit more obscure. The first thing that made me really interested is like you had this super prosperous design agency doing packaging for software, right? In the old days when software was still boxed and you could own it. And from there, you went into the first publishing adventure, publishing Critic, which was this ridiculously expensive design thinking magazine, if you could even call it a magazine, right? Which made you go bust, or almost. And it didn't stop there. So, why did you choose to give up a profitable design business for going into publishing for the first time?
Um, well, I have to tone you down a little bit. I
Please do
didn't
so.
just stop doing work for clients, for design clients. I kept doing it. So, in addition to doing projects for companies in Silicon Valley, include mostly software, as you say, software packaging. We made so much money in that we could afford to self-fund a very expensive magazine. It cost $30,000 per issue to produce, and we weren't depending on advertising. So, in
Right.
that sense, you're right. It wasn't a magazine. A magazine, the word magazine, it's French magazine, um, is a warehouse, storehouse. Um, and what is it a storehouse for? All the people, all the products that the advertisers are selling. That's what a
Yeah.
magazine is. It's a way for um, a lot of different companies to get their products in front of people in print, right? Without paying for the whole thing. They just get a page or something, so they pay for that page. And that supports the magazine. Why do people even bother with the magazine? Because they get articles for free. So it's an advertising supported thing. Um, and that's a
Right.
magazine. So while we were printed, it's loosely called a magazine, but it was a journal. It was paid for by subscribers and purchasers of the magazine because they really wanted the information in it, not the advertising. Now, we did have some advertising because part of the way we funded the magazine was to allow paper companies to advertise in the magazine as a trade out, mostly as a trade out. So they would give us all the paper for the magazine, really expensive, great, beautiful paper. And we would give them a few pages of ads for free. And then they would also give them some magazines for free, maybe 100 or something. And they would give those out to customers to show what their paper could do because we'd be doing beautiful things on this paper. So it was just a kind of a win-win with advertisers. But mostly there wasn't any advertising. It was all about the articles and the ideas in the magazine. And the idea behind it was that, well, I wanted to make a contribution back to the community of designers. And I thought the best way was to start sharing the thinking behind design, which became known as design thinking. So it was the magazine of design thinking before there was even an understanding of what that is. But there's still really no understanding of what that is, unfortunately. But but at least you understood that there is thinking behind design. It's not all just people just doing whatever the hell they want. Um, there's a kind of a system behind it. There's ways of thinking about it. There are principles and so forth. And none of the magazines up to that point were discussing those at all. There was no way to get that information except to go find a mentor or go find a good designer and try to work for that designer. And maybe
Yeah.
you get some of that by osmosis, you'd learn some of that stuff, or just figure it out by yourself. So I mostly figured it out by myself. I did it by trial and error in my work as a designer. And then I wanted to share that and also tap the ideas of all the other great designers out there who had some ideas to offer. So I was bringing the community together around the thinking behind design.
Righty.
Um, so far, so good. The idea
So
was,
far, so good.
yes, so far, so good. And it started out well. I mean, we published the magazine. It looked really good. It got out on time. From day one, we were getting subscribers, and the subscribers we got were the cream of the crop. All the top designers were going, "Yeah, this is fantastic. Sign me up." But how many top designers are there?
Hmm.
Maybe
Well,
100.
now or back then, right? Because
Back
just
then,
to
there
just
was
to
about 100 that would meet the level that I wanted to
right.
read the mag.
And just as a side note for the audience, that was something around 1996 to
Yeah,
2001
yeah, it's
when
5 years, five
critique
years
was
of,
going out.
that's right. So, I mean, my first subscriber was Ivan Shermaya, famous designer. The second one was Paula Scher. So they appreciated it, but it got harder after that because as you sort of come down from the top of the pyramid, you have fewer and fewer people who read about design, who care that much that they want to learn something about it, other than just do it and learn as they go. But people who actually wanted to compete at that level of excellence were pretty few. And I needed to sell 10,000 copies. I was printing 10,000 copies. Because if you print less, the price would just be outrageous. And it
Yeah.
already was $18 an issue. So it's like buying a book each time,
Yeah.
which is a tactical or a strategic mistake. I think there just wasn't that many people that would want to subscribe to that. Of course, if you subscribed, you got a much lower price, but people they go, I don't know. The first one was good. I'm not sure the second one will be good. So I think I'll just buy them in the bookstore one by one. If I like it, I'll buy it. And the problem with that is that there's no money to be made selling magazines in a bookstore. I mean,
Right.
you hardly break even. And so subscriptions was the whole thing. So it was very difficult. And I think we got up to 4,000 subscribers before we finally gave up. And we did really worked on this. It was a labor of love. The quality was off the charts. It beat all the other magazines. I think it was probably the only magazine that was more beautifully printed was Graphis. But there was no content in there other than just the images. You just were looking at things. You didn't get any discussion or ideas from Graphis.
Is there
Uh,
a master collection of all the issues that you did that you could buy on eBay on the aftermarket or something like that? Must
yeah,
be
you can.
ridiculously
You
expensive these days.
really expensive, and sometimes an issue costs $1,000. At least that's the price that I don't think anybody's paying $1,000. But I mean, even 5 years after we closed the magazine, people were walking into my studio and saying, "Can I buy a whole set?" And for $400, which is the actual cost of the actual
Right.
ticket price of the whole series, which was 18 issues at the time, was about $400.
When we
But
talked last time, you had this wonderful story which kind of concluded the whole thing, like why it didn't really work out at the end so well. But before we go into that story, I'd like to reflect a bit on the thing you mentioned with like ridiculously priced, but maybe also underpriced. Maybe the thing is that it wasn't ridiculously expensive; it was ridiculously inexpensive. Meaning it was
um,
expensive as for a magazine, but if you priced it as of a Rolls Royce, could have been more successful. Maybe
the cost was too high. I think it was just the timing wasn't good. I think if it was 10 years earlier, it would have done much better. But the internet was just starting to take off, and people were putting stuff online for free. And
right.
so, and that's pretty much never changed since then. So it killed the magazine because people would just willingly put stuff on. It didn't matter if it was good or not. It just was free. So people go for free. Um, so I think, if I were to do it again, it wouldn't be a magazine. Certainly wouldn't be an expensive to print magazine. I think I would have printed a newspaper. I think I would have printed the cheapest thing possible with beautiful design, but maybe just one color. Maybe then there's an insert of some color, but don't focus on the beauty of the
Mm-hmm.
work. Focus on the ideas behind the work, and use the newspaper as a medium for advertising events. So putting on events with the newspaper as the advertising piece. So the newspaper could almost be free, but it would be very inexpensive. So there'd be no excuse not to subscribe to it. No hurdle at all. I had a project manager who always did so well with clients. She just knew how to talk to them, and she always got the work uh, in the right circumstances. Like she'd get it, she'd get the work in a way that we could profit from it, and everybody would do well out of it. And I asked her how she managed to do it, and she said, "Always put the cookie on the lowest shelf." So we put the cookie on a pretty high shelf when we charged $18 a copy. We said, "Are you a serious person or not? If you're a serious person, you will figure out how to buy this because it's going to be so valuable for you." And then we found out, well, the whole industry is not very serious. It's just a few people at the top. And they loved it. They loved it. So, no problem. And they were donating things free. Like Milton Glaser was writing and designing entire articles. He'd illustrate a whole article and handwrite everything. And I mean, people would, anything we wanted, they would do it to be in the magazine because they loved it. But those are just the top people. So there's just no money in having 100
Right.
really great
Uh,
customers, really great
it's like
subscribers.
I can relate to this so much because if I recall, like recalling my career, I remember doing so many things the great way, chasing the excellence. And you could say, as designers, we were designing for ourselves and our pleasure and for the joy of doing things perfectly, which is the old way, versus the new way, which is doing things only sufficiently good to be like good enough, right?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much right. I think, it wasn't simply because design was commoditized. It was commoditized by the computer, which made it easy for anybody to copy anything
Hmm.
and to make pretty beautiful looking things. It lets you iterate really quickly, especially with typography. So
Yeah.
typography is really hard to learn, but mostly it was hard in the early days because you had to pay for it every time. If you wanted to try out some type and see how it looked, you had to pay $25 at least for a little tiny bit, maybe
Yeah.
$150 if you're doing a letterhead to see if the type looked good. And then you had to pay it again to do it again. So it was, there was a lot of responsibility there, cost wise. And then the computer came along and allowed you to try things really quickly. And so that made typography better. But what it didn't do is help with originality. So we have much
Yeah.
less originality as a percentage of the amount of work out there and a lot more copying. And now it's just get the job out there and get paid. And then so what the computer did is drive down the cost and the value of design.
I did
So the
have
cost went
a
down, but you cost less too. And so you made less money
yeah,
as a designer.
yeah. Yeah, I did have a quick comments exchange recently on social media because someone said that, with this clickbaity headline that Canva democratized design. And, I was, well, I took the bait and commented that it's not the design that was democratized by Canva. Like what Canva did was it democratized tools which look alike the tools that designers used to use, but it didn't bring design any closer to people. Like people started using Canva so that they didn't have a reason to use designers, right? So now
Right.
everybody uses
So
Canva, but
yeah, and
and there
everything
is no
looks
reason to
alike,
hire designers.
and the meaning just evaporates, right? Just
Yeah, yeah,
because nobody's putting any thought into it. Yeah, they are tools. People used to say the computer is a tool. I always disagreed. I said it's a whole studio. I mean, it's not a tool. A tool is a pen.
right. Yeah,
It's much more than that, and it's much more dangerous and also powerful. So, and the designers knew what was happening at the time, but at the same time, they wanted the tools because they could make more money in the short term. In the long term, they were digging their own graves. That's really
right.
what was happening. They were ruining their own profession because it made it so that there was no value in the work that used to be valuable, which was the thinking, the beauty of the work, the sense of that somebody had to do this work. There was a hand and a mind behind it. They were humans doing this work, which made it thrilling. Now it's practical and um, meaningless in a sense.
And
So,
exactly the same thing is happening right now with, AI and all this kind of stuff.
and AI is just going to increase that like 100 times. And
But
so why do we not just say, well, let's not use AI then? Well, because it offers short-term benefits.
no, well, that's
If
what
I
I
use it
said. I'm
right
not
now,
using
I can
it.
save 5 hours of research. What's wrong with that? Well, great in the short term, bad in the long term. So
Right.
we've got to figure out a way to get humans back into it. And I don't know if we're going to be successful, but I think that's the mission we all should be on, is how do we control the monster that we've invented? Because it's
Yep.
going to kill us. It's going to kill humanity. It's going to kill our reason to live. That's the thing. And
So,
we all know that every movie that comes out has that as a theme, but we just can't stop ourselves because it's free, it's there, and I can get the job done today. So it's
yeah.
pathetic.
So, back to the magazine, because before we jump into the next publishing chapter related to internet, there is this thing about declining readership that you mentioned once. Calling someone, do you guys? Well, I don't want to spoil it.
Oh yes, the story I told. Yes, this was with Critique Magazine, right? So, we're all very idealistic, most designers were at the time. They might still be a little bit. Um, but we expected that designers would love to be better at the work they do, and to have more information about about the best designers and how they thought, and learn from that, right? And so then we found out that subscriptions were moving very slowly. That was very hard to get anybody to part with money over something that was actually, to them, work. I'm going to pay to get a magazine so I can spend my time reading and thinking. I'd rather just make some money, and work with my clients. I don't have time for that. I started having my guys in the back room, the people who are shipping out magazines, just call people, just call up the famous studios, all of them, just all the studios you can find. Just go through the phone book, find them, call them, and ask them if they want to buy this. Just tell them about the magazine and say, hey, we'll send you a sample or whatever. But really, take a shot. I think you'll like it. And it was actually the most successful thing we did because it was personal, but it was very slow and time consuming and not sustainable. But during these calls, my back room manager came to me and he goes, "This is really hard. I mean, some people are just really thankful that there's this option out there. But I talked to this one guy. He's really famous. You said he was one of the top annual report designers, and he said, why would I want to buy a design magazine?" And I told him, because it's got new information. It's about thinking and everything. He says, yeah. So you want me to stop my work and read a magazine? And then he puts his hand over the phone, but my guy could still hear him talking. He says, No, he didn't put his hand over the phone. He says, let me just check with my staff. And he yells out to the room and he says, anybody here read design magazines? And he comes back on the phone and says, nope, nobody. Okay, so this is my audience. This is my audience. And I thought, okay, I don't know how he got to be where he is because his work is beautiful, but obviously he doesn't need to be brilliant. He just needs to do beautiful work. So fine, probably an outlier, but I think he was more, more an example of what I was facing. So I got
No,
to hear that.
I love this story, and I love it for so many reasons. But one of them is like it's remarkable and it's meaningful and it's so much telling about the declining readership, but also about our idealistic approach to imagining the world of designers and people in general to be like ourselves, right? Not everybody's chasing
Yes.
greatness.
Yeah, no,
Um,
they aren't. No, they aren't.
so romantic
But they might
naivety.
believe they might believe they are. They might believe they are great. In fact, that's the Kruger-Dunning theory that the more you
Yeah.
know, the less you think you know, and the less you know, the more you think you know. And that's what we're suffering from now. Is everybody thinks they know enough? They think they're really brilliant, which is almost like a marker for a society that doesn't know very much. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
it's the evidence. So anyway,
Uh,
that's what we were struggling against, and so I think after I closed the magazine, I started doing some other things just sort of by accident. I went around giving workshops on brand and finding that that actually was very interesting. I got to meet a lot of people. They really wanted this information. They would be willing to pay for it a lot more than they paid for our magazine to be in a room with people and have someone tell them how to do something new. And so if I had used the magazine as the advertising media for a whole system of workshops around the world, the timing would have been beautiful. I would have avoided the whole problem with computers stealing everything, and done very, very well. But that was so far from my mind. I had no idea that that would work. I wasn't even thinking about it until the day I closed the magazine. Then it dawned on me. I went, oh my God. I was doing something that had come, that whole industry of magazine printing and magazine publishing had really come to an end with computers. And I just didn't see it. Nobody wanted to believe it, and there's still magazines being printed. So, but really the money went out of it. The interest went out of it, and the audience went elsewhere. So, live and learn. However, I still think, even though people aren't reading, I think that'll be the salvation of civilization. We have to go back to reading. Why? Not because it's easy, but because it's hard. We've
exactly.
we've lost the interest in doing what's hard, and we want everything
Exactly.
easy. And easy leads to enslavement, a kind of mental enslavement.
Exactly. There is so many thoughts I have around that, but let me not get into that rabbit hole now, because we have a few other things I like to talk about. And so, okay, so you try to revolutionize magazine publishing industry by turning the model upside down and not basing the model on ads. You wanted to do great work. Didn't, I mean, the work was great, but didn't work out business wise.
Yeah.
The internet came about, and you were, it's 2001. Okay, a couple years later, you're publishing your first book, which is reversing the tide, right? From the magazine which failed, it was the
Well, yeah,
thing that made you,
yeah. Actually,
rise again, right?
one thing that dawned on me during this 5-year period of struggle was that if we had published, instead of 4 magazines a year, 4 books a year with the same material and
Yeah.
had them in bookstores, they would still be selling today.
Yeah.
Right? People would still buy the back issues and they'd be on the shelf. And but with the magazine, they go away after 3 months, right? People
The
just figure, well,
art.
that's old. because that's what they were taught with
Oh yeah,
magazines.
yeah.
We were designing a magazine that would never get old. You would just be making, buying a collection of beautiful books that you could refer to. But that's not the way the audience sees magazines. They think magazine is like, I'm not going to pay $18 for a magazine. I'd pay $3 for a magazine. So they couldn't make that mental shift, and we shouldn't have tried to get them to do that. And so anyway, I
This is the
realized
art.
that,
Yeah, this is all about the art of positioning and framing, right? And I wish, like, I'm back in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, what did Rory Sutherland do back in the day, and what would he have advised you? You know
well,
Rory's thinking,
I know who he is, but I don't know his thinking well enough
right?
to say. But my guess is that we're on the same page about framing and branding and positioning and all that kind of stuff. I needed to do something that would sell for longer than 3 months, which is not a long enough period to establish anything. So now you have to imagine me. I closed the magazine. Um, the magazine's failure brought down the other business. I had to let everybody go, and I was left with all I had was no people and thousands of magazines that maybe I could sell someday if I could figure out how. So for the time being, I just moved them from the studio that I closed into a smaller warehouse where they were stacked in boxes to the rafters. And I carved out a little space and I put a door over a couple stacks of books, and that was my desk in the middle of all these boxes. This is my punishment for making a mistake, for thinking I knew better than the marketplace. So sitting there every day, all I did was write this book, and then when it was ready to design, I got some of my people came helped me out and helped me design it and get it out there. And based on that book, I restarted my business in a new model, which was not graphic design, because I learned a lot from this magazine. I've learned that I didn't want to be in that business anymore because there was no place for me to go. I mean, I took it as far as I could go, and so I needed to move up a level into consulting. And where I wanted to consult is uh, how design and everything to do with design and making stuff fit in with something bigger than that, which was the business that was going to buy the work, from us all. So how do we interface with businesses, because businesses always use design very badly. They didn't know what they were buying, and nobody was able to tell them why design was so valuable, why it was worth all this work that we were putting into it. So that's what I turned my attention to, in helping companies understand design and branding and putting the whole thing together in a way that was just more strategic and solid and um, could just benefit the company in a bigger way. So that's what the first book was about. And I started a company based on that, and it was successful from the first day. I had enough contacts with companies, and I said, this is what I want to do. And they said, that is amazing. We need that so much. And so it brought me up to a higher level of customer client inside companies. And I was often dealing with the management class,
Right.
instead of, oh, I don't know, the marketing director.
So
So
one thing worth diving into and like bringing into the picture is like, okay, so you had this wonderful magazine which was so well produced and so, polished. And one of the reasons for failure is like declining or non-existent readership. And there
among
is a
designers,
lesson
among
and
designers.
among designers. And there
Yeah.
is a lesson you took because the book we're talking about is obviously Brand Gap. And for people who don't know it, it was one of the first whiteboard kind of books. So like a PPT presentation almost.
It was
Meaning
illustrated and big type and very few words. There was only 18,000 words in that book, and a normal business book is about 60,000.
exactly.
So I was using everything I had learned about advertising and design and applying it to publishing. And I knew from advertising that you make it easy on people. You compress things. You don't make them read a lot of boring stuff. You give them the most powerful parts right away in the headline. You
Yeah,
just go right for it and you don't waste their time. And so I had to reverse the whole idea of what a book was, typically two or 300 pages of type, to make a book, and say, no, we're going to have 100 pages and there's going to be not very many words, but it's going to be packed with powerful ideas.
exactly.
Let's get to the point, you know.
So the
So, and that was a huge, and I thought this is going to be so strange for people because they've never seen a book that looks like this. Um, and it wasn't strange. They were like, yeah, this is great. And within 3 months, the book went to the top of the charts. It was number 15 on Amazon of all books, not just business books, not just brand
Mhm.
books, all books out of 6 million.
And
And
this is how you got rich with the book, right?
no, well, yes, but not with the book. Okay, so we have to talk about what a book is for. You can't get money, you can't get rich making writing books unless you have a fiction book, usually, that becomes a hit. So, like, let's say one of the top 5 books of the year, like Harry Potter. Okay, you can get rich from Harry Potter. How many books were pretty much about the same quality as Harry Potter that didn't
Yeah,
get any traction? Probably many, right?
yeah.
But Harry Potter caught on. It got spread really quickly, and then it took over people's minds. If I want to have sorcerers and fun things happen in my life in books, that's the one I'm going to go to, and everybody's reading it, so I want to read it too, and we can all talk about it. So that's how a hit works. So with business books, you don't have hits. So you don't. You basically, the best you can do is find a topic that people are interested in. Let's say 3 years ago it might have been AI, that nobody understands, and have the best book, the easiest book to understand by the most famous author out in that moment, and maybe you'll have a hit and maybe you'll make some money, but the real money won't come from that. It'll come from going around and giving talks about it, from being on television. Television itself won't do it, but television can sell more books, and maybe you'll sell a million books, and that's going to be $1 million or $2 million. So that's good. But how many people get that? Very few. So what you use in business, what you use a book for is a kind of a calling card for something else. Like, this is my topic. I am the leader in this topic, and here's the book. You can decide for yourself. If you want to know more, I'm available for talks and workshops and classes and consulting. That's where the money is. So that book is just a fancy business card that tells people that you're the expert in this. Caution here, you have to be the expert. You can't just be another guy writing about the same old thing. And you can't write a book that's not very well written and expect that to catch on. It has to have everything going for it. And so it's very difficult, but there's room for that. And there's room for, I don't know, maybe 100 books like that at any given time out of the millions being published. But people who are going and just self-publishing their version of something everyone else already can find elsewhere is not going to make them any money any way. It might get them up a little bit of credibility so that they can run a business and they can wave it around and give it to clients who will never read it. But an actually hit book becomes a business. It's like you go around and you talk about that book. And I didn't realize how important that was until my book became a hit. And then I found people were calling and saying, can you talk about that? Can you come and talk to my company? And then I realized, this is where the money is in this. And no matter how many copies, I think I've sold 500,000 copies of the Brand Gap, which is pretty good.
But you do have another
But it's
story
not
which
enough to
I
it's not enough to get rich on. Okay, the other stuff
right.
is.
But so you sold 500,000 copies, but there was another story that I was teasing in, right? Because if you look at the amount of downloads of your book,
Oh yeah, 25 million or something. That was probably a big factor in making my book the one that everybody wanted to say, this is the book. This is the one you have to read. They're still saying it. Even though I've written more current books,
Yeah.
slightly better books over time as I got better at it, no, they want the first one because that's the one that represents the big change from a kind of old-fashioned view of branding to a more modern view of branding. That was the one. So what happened was I got a lot of requests to do workshops on the brand gap, teach people branding, especially designers. I had a lot of contacts in the design business, design community. So designers and also entrepreneurs and strategists would come to these workshops. Everything in the book, which is pretty visual already, became even more visual and more distinctive as a slide presentation. And so I would have my classes based on slides, leading you through all the things you needed to learn. And then we do exercises based on those slides. I used to give away a DVD with all the slides as part of, you pay your few $100s to go to the class and you get this with it. And someone took it and they put it on a new website called SlideShare, which I didn't know about, which is just what it said. You can share slides. It won't cost you anything. Share all your work. It won't cost you anything. And people took the whole thing, every slide, one person did, and put it on SlideShare, and I didn't know about it. And everybody started talking about it in the book, and I'd say, which copy? There's two versions of it, the original version and then a revised version that had a dictionary in it. I said, which version did you get of the book? And they looked at me puzzled, and they said, no, I got it online. I said, you can't get it online. It's books. You have to buy the book. And he goes, no, it's online. And so I finally went and looked at SlideShare, and it's right on the homepage, my slides. And it always was right on the homepage of this because the way they did it was whatever slides people wanted to view, they would put that on the homepage, right? And so once it gets started, then people don't go past the homepage. And so whatever's there is what they see. So it just stayed and stayed and stayed year after year. And then someone said there's like, I don't know, 200,000 or no, 20,000 people have read it. There's a little counter there. I said, you're kidding. I haven't even sold 5,000 books and or 10,000 books, and there's already that 20,000 people have read it online. That's because the whole book was laid out in slides. So, so finally I got a clue, and I realized that actually that was really good for me in the book. I just didn't realize that I was missing out because all these comments were on that thing saying, where can I buy the book? How can I get you to do a talk? How can I get you to come in and do work for my company? Like for 2 years, I didn't know all that. So I was missing, I was just busy writing the second book, and working for clients. I had no idea. And eventually I realized that if you have a hit book, you can make a whole business out of that. And so that's eventually what I ended up doing is making a living on books.
Which is a wonderful story about the beginnings of the internet and your love for the new medium, which was actually growing into strength, right? Because it was 2003 probably to 2005, so just post the dot-com bubble, but
Yeah,
the new
the
internet was
original came
being
out in
born.
2003, and in 3 years, sales were just slightly in a slight downturn. And I thought, well, I want to keep this going because it's doing really well. And so I revised the book and I put in a little dictionary with 500 brand terms, um, just to make a change. Nothing changed in the book, just that little addition. And then on the cover, I put now with a dictionary. It wasn't even necessary. It just kept selling and selling and selling, and it's selling more now than it did in the beginning because the audience has grown. It just
Yeah.
keeps going, and in a way, that's great. I think it's mostly great, but it also means that anything else I publish will be in the shade of that. even though it's
Yeah.
better. It doesn't matter how good they are. If it's about branding, it's going to be less than the original. So
Well, it's all
that's,
about the context, right? It's all about finding the best context and timing for your thoughts, right? And the moment you published it, and
yeah,
specifically
yeah.
for the kind of people you address this, I think that was the power move, which made it,
And
so
the timing
successful, right?
was perfect, and it was sufficiently different. Difference is everything. I took a big risk in doing it that way because if the book didn't work, I was probably going to be bankrupt. But I said, I'm not going to go halfway. I'm not going to make a safe book. I need a book I want to hit a home run. I don't want to walk to first base. Okay. So,
So
and then it turned out okay.
the first revolution was when you revolutionized the magazine publishing industry by removing ads. The second one was revolutionizing the book publishing industry by removing the price and sharing everything for free.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm big on
Okay.
revolutionizing. That's true. But I wouldn't say that I revolutionized the magazine business. I think I missed the boat. I didn't understand the real opportunity because it wasn't apparent to anybody at the time. In a few years, it would have been because events were very profitable. Up until COVID, events
Yeah.
were like just growing and growing and growing, and people would spend all kinds of money, way too much money, traveling to an event to hang out with people when they could buy a book for a fraction of the price and learn the same things. But, that's the way people are. They just like to hang out together. When COVID hit, um, that went away. And so everything had to change for everybody. And events never came back. And maybe they will,
Yeah.
but what happened is Zoom took over, and now everyone realizes we can do what we're doing here. We don't need to spend all that money in travel and
Yeah.
ruin the planet with all the fuel we're wasting on traveling around and everything. Just for a lot of reasons, it's making more sense. So the opportunity became on Zoom, and my partner and I, Andy Starr, had just started an event business where we were teaching branding as a more serious pursuit. We decided we're only going to do this live. We want people to meet each other. We want them to collaborate, form relationships. And right from the beginning, that worked far beyond our expectations. People formed lasting friendships from these classes because they're
Yeah.
difficult and they're learning something. They're being around people that are learning the same thing, and there was no other way to learn it really. So it was great. And then COVID hit, and we had to adapt or die. So we had to adapt to Zoom, and we did, and it worked out pretty well. But we still miss the live part, and we're keeping that going as best we can. All these technology changes are dangerous, and they're full of opportunity at the same time. So it was dangerous to the magazine that the internet kind of ruined the business, but it was great for my book because accidentally it took
Yeah.
off
Yeah.
because my
Yeah.
books actually being so visual and simple lent themselves to the internet too.
Right. And
So,
at the same time, you didn't give everything in the book because it was like the good starter in order to tease someone into a workshop, right?
right, because you can't teach everything with principles.
Do the
You have
work.
to work them out. You have to
Yeah.
do the work. And actually that's been something that Andy and I have discovered is that people would rather talk than work. And they will talk and talk and talk, and they'll make it political, and they'll have all these opinions. But whenever it comes down to it, they don't want to do the work. You have to force them to do the work. They don't understand that the power is in the work. And so we had to start telling people to get together with your teams, talk it over, and come up with the answer and show everybody. Report back. Give us some evidence of what you have come up with your ideas. Draw them, write them out, whatever you're going to do. And the teams would immediately go to work, and they loved talking about what they were going to
Yeah.
do as a team. And they talked for 15 minutes, and then they realized their 15 minutes was up and they've got nothing.
So I believe this is fantastic way of teaching, and I think is highly valuable because, ultimately, if you are transitioning from like, the pencil and being a designer to, strategy and consulting business,
Yeah.
huge
So
chunk
we
of
would say,
that
yeah,
is
use your pencil, draw something. We don't care how good it is. Make a video, whatever, but you've got 15 minutes. Let's make a rule that
preschool.
you don't talk until you have something to show the rest of your team. Show it,
Yeah,
show it, do it, come up with an example, act it out, but don't just talk in general, vague terms. Because you're going to find out that when you draw something, people are amazed by that. I
yeah.
mean,
Show
then
not
suddenly
tell.
they're
Exactly. Yeah,
riveted by that. They can't think of anything else except what you show them. Do that. That's what your job is. You're doing
it
that
is.
all the way through to the audience. So, you're going to show them something where they just can't think of it any other way because you've nailed it. All right. So this has been an ongoing struggle, and I think it wasn't like that 10, 20 years earlier. People who worked in design and any creative industries would make things. That's what they did. That was their
Yeah,
job. They
and
drew
they
them.
thought,
They
and
thought, and
only
they made models.
later.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
they
but
didn't talk before they had something.
the thing that changed, the transition that you're describing, is the separation of strategy as a separate discipline, which got, terribly popular.
Sure.
So now you have all these, thinkers which don't even lift a pencil, and it's
Yeah.
just pure nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, let's
'Cause,
not.
when I used to look at people's portfolios, and they wanted a job at the studio, they'd come in and they'd show their portfolio, and I'd say, "Oh, okay," and they'd say, "But really, I'm an idea person." Oh, okay. Well, we have a lot of those here. What can you do with your ideas? Well, I just come up with the ideas. Uh-huh. Okay. Well, that sounds interesting, but not very useful here. Good luck with that. So, if you can't operationalize your ideas with some art form, with some craft, whatever it is, I don't see how you're going to really add to a team. If the goal is to create something, right? If it's
Yeah,
just to decide something, sure, you can just browbeat people, or you can convince them with logic or charm or whatever to make a decision. But if you're trying to innovate, do something new, you can't decide the way forward. You have to
yeah,
design the way forward. So, and now we're stuck in this world we have where no one knows how to do anything except talk about it. And so along comes Twitter and X and Facebook, and everybody's talking all the time, talking, 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 and no one's doing anything. They're doing little things on TikTok, but nothing important. Nothing important happens there.
I
So
would disagree here, but
yeah, no, I
well,
might. I'm being facetious, but um, bring those skills into something that means something for society, and sell
yeah,
those. And stop just giving your opinion all the time. You can't do everything, but someone else can do something that complements what you do. So collaboration, skills, and collaboration are hugely important, and especially nowadays when
yeah. That's
we don't
why
seem
the
to
workshop
have.
format that you started with Level C was so important. And that's why, when people get into from design to consulting and branding, which is consultational to a huge extent, the workshop format is like how the work gets done, right? Ultimately, you have some designers. But well, at the same time, like I'm seeing the second part of the picture where we are flooded with insane amount of like beautifully designed visuals, and the visual level of pictures you're seeing have
Yeah.
dramatically increased over years, but there is
Yes.
no substance there is no thinking, right?
No thinking and no point to
So
it. It's just beautiful. Um, and that's not doesn't give design a very good name, does it? So
yeah,
then it's the problem that design has always had, is that the people with power use design as a last stage in making something pretty. They don't use it as a way to think through a problem. They don't use it as a lens to find out what to do. They use it at the last minute to make something look
yeah.
good after they've decided. So
So
decide,
strategy
then
and then
design,
tactical execution, which
right?
yeah,
You need to reverse it. You need to design, then decide.
Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about the third revolution in
Okay.
publishing, right? Because we discussed two revolutions. The third one is you're still doing level C, obviously, but you have so much time that you keep writing. And your next chapter, which is Octavo,